Oh my goodness. Hold on. Hey now.
Hi there, I'm Grace Mary. I'll be interviewing you.
How you doing?
Thank you again for agreeing to talk to us. This is really the highlight of our semester.
Oh, fantastic. That is great to hear. Great to be here.
So the format will be, I'll ask you some questions, and then towards the end we'll have audience questions. So anyone that has a question, you can put it in the chat and I'll go through them and ask them at the end. So once again, this is Brian. He is one of the top composers, and we're really lucky to have him today. First, I would like to know more about your musical upbringing.
Oh, he's the cool guy, right?
Whoa, sorry about that. How did you get into music and composing?
It started, like most musicians, it's kind of just part of who you are. I don't really remember when it started in particular, but I was a young kid. I was very interested in what my ears were hearing just as a child, and I was lucky enough there was a piano and a drum kit and a guitar around. So I just picked up all of them, and started playing. I don't remember how old I was, but started doing that. And then as time went, I started really got interested in film music, amongst other things, but I was drawn to writing music that sounded, I guess, kind of, at least in that kind of that world. And something I loved doing was I would listen to soundtracks and relive the film away from the movie, so I could, be by myself or in the back of the car going on a trip or whatever, and relive Raiders of the Lost Ark or E.T. or something like that. And that was a really important experience for me. And then later on, I started writing music, and I was probably around, I don't know, 11 or 12, and I would start to write music for novels that I'd read, science fiction novels and different things. And that was just something that I did. I just wrote music to books for whatever reason. And then I got, over time, I got lucky in terms of some of the music that I'd written sent me on tour. When I was 15, I wrote a concerto that I toured Europe and Asia. And by the time I hit college, it was, something that I didn't know would be a realistic aspiration, but I so wanted to be a musician. I was playing some gigs as a session drummer on some records by then. And then I got really lucky. I was actually back at Harvard, and I wrote a requiem that was performed by the Boston Symphony as kind of like the opening number of a local person. that was, I think Dvorak was the main thing. And it was just like a kind of this local piece that I'd written, but John Williams happened to be there, and he contacted his agent and said, you got to listen to this person. And anyway, so I ended up flying out to LA and met with those agents, his agents, who are my agents to this day. That was 25 years ago or something like that. And so I got just really, really lucky. I then wrote a bunch of, I got some films, which was amazing. And I loved doing independent films and dramas, and eventually the right people heard them. William Friedkin, he's the director of French Connection and Exorcist, and all that. He heard some of my music from a small film, Frailty, and he brought me into the kind of world of, I guess, bigger studio films. And that's how I ended up meeting Steven Spielberg, who brought me on for a bunch of his films, and then Marvel and blah, blah, blah. And just been very fortunate that now I can, my hobby is my job. So here I am talking to you, lovely people.
That's a great career. So you talked about your beginnings, and since then you've composed and conducted for huge blockbuster movies like Avengers, Age of Ultron, Furious 7, Iron Man 3, Thor, etc., Crazy Rich Asians. I was wondering, can you talk about your process for scoring films? Are you someone that comes up with themes, or do you find yourself more into improvising? How do you go about your scoring?
You know, of the two, I'm not really an improviser, more like an impressionist, where you watch a film and I sit down with the director and it kind of is like whatever hits you, and then I'll go and pick it out. So all melodies will happen, usually a thematic idea that'll happen. I'll kind of go find it. I don't know exactly how the process works. It's the mysteries of music, the idea that intervals between two frequency ranges can create sadness or happiness or melancholy or 72% yearning and 10% nostalgia, and like these very specific emotions can be done with the paintbrush of music. And I don't understand why that is. I don't understand why Lydian kind of feels like fantasy, you know what I mean? But for whatever reason, when I watch something, those things will hit me in a way that seems to translate to other people that will be in the audience. And so I just go with my gut, and I kind of hear something in my head and I'll go and I'll start with it. But the process is very collaborative. It's very different than when I'm writing music outside of film, because you are working with the director. And I think a lot of the time, us musicians, we very much lean on the fact that we're musicians and composers first. And that's true. The thing about film composition is that you're a film composer. And often your first name is forgotten. It's film. And if your first name is film and it's your job, you need to really, I think, first kind of get in the head of what the creator of the film needs. And in that way, it's you're reacting off that particular person. So it's always very important for me, like in Crazy Rich Asians, John Chu, the director, we had these ideas. The studio had one idea. They thought we want a kind of an eclectic, contemporary, romantic comedy score with guitar and modern this and that. And John and I saw the director's assembly of the movie, and we thought, this is a throwback to the 50s. I think we should write an old school romantic string score, and also the other moments all be big band jazz. And there's this idea that kind of shocks the studio. The studio is like, what are you guys doing? Why would you want to have old school? Like, no, trust us, And the reason why you can really stand for an idea and like that is because you're with the director and you guys came up with the idea, and that to me is such an important part of that, the origins, the genesis of an idea for a film score.
So you talked a bit about Crazy Rich Asians. I was wondering if you could talk more about the superhero movies, and those are such huge movies with huge brands and huge audiences. Does that go into your composing, like, or
yeah? It does. I mean, okay, so for me, I grew up huge sci-fi guy, comic book collector. I'm like Kid Comic-Con, like I am. Those are my people. That is me, right? That is me. Like, every Star Wars action figure, like so it's kind of, it's really strange. It is crazy for me to now be writing music for these franchises, because they're things I grew up with. There's a direct fanboy situation going on when a lot of the things I've done. Huge Trekker, like, so scoring Star Trek Enterprise, very strange. Huge, everything from, I mean, certainly the Marvel comics were, I have stacks and stacks and stacks. So but here's the cool thing about doing things like that. I mean, I've done like the Power Rangers movie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a lot of these kind of comic adaptations. But the Marvel stuff that's really cool is that Kevin Feige, who's the president of Marvel, he's like one of us. Like he is the same guy that collected comics and really believes like it is not a corporate. I know it's a huge, like there's this huge massive business behind it, but at its heart you have heart and soul. And so on something like that, you would think that, oh my gosh, there are a million cooks in the kitchen. These movies cost, like I think the Avengers one, it is like $300 million to make or something crazy. All this, shareholders on the line, and there's Disney and da da da. But it is the one situation where you really like sit down at lunch in the boardroom with the director and Kevin, and you all are just talking about ideas of what you think would be cool on a film that you'd want to go see. So in that situation, writing for superheroes that's at least at Marvel is it is like you're a kid again, and I get to play out all those kind of fantasies of a lot of kids grow up and they'll watch Kobe Bryant or something play basketball, and they imagine themselves in the bright lights. But I was that guy. I wanted to do film music. I wanted to do music, and what would I want to do it for? Something like superheroes and sci-fi and all that. I mean, even this is even crazier. So when I was talking about how I wrote music to novels. Okay, so when I was I don't know, 12 or something like that, I loved the Frank Herbert new the Dune novels. There's these giant 700-page, but the most psychedelic, crazy, stories, and just I thought it was so epic. And I was a huge Star Wars kid, so like I imagined this world that could be Dune, Children of Dune, Dune Messiah, Dune, all those books. Really into Fremen, the language, kind of all. I mean, it was that nerdy. Anyway, I had written this whole thing that I'd written down on paper, Salusa Secundus, and all these different pieces when I was like 12, and I imagined in my head this music would be so epic and everything. It was sweet. I didn't know what I was doing yet at all, but it was cool in terms of what I thought it could be. The crazy thing was that then cut to many years later. So like 2003, and Greg Utanis, this director, calls me and says, Brian, Disney's they're doing this MLW movie based on Dune, Children of Dune, and Dune Messiah. Would you like to score it? And here I am being asked to score the thing that I like. One of the first things I did as almost a proto quasi scoring kid was, write out the music. And anyway, so it kind of like, again, dream came true. I was the dreamer kid, exactly the thing that I'd written music for. So the actual opening 2 minutes of the score for Children of Dune is the thing that I wrote, Salusa Secundus, when I was a kid. And so it's like a tribute to the dreamer that I was when I was a kid. And so I know this is going off the topic of what you're saying, but yes, like I found actually kind of these sci-fi and superhero movies to be some of the most kind of pure experiences from the perspective of just doing what you love, to truly doing what you love, and kind of just like going with your artistic instincts first, for sure.
I love how it all came full circle for you.
Yeah. Me too.
So you've worked on many projects, over 70 films. You've also written music for What Men Want, 5 Feet Apart, Rambo: Last Blood, Charlie's Angels, so many films. I was wondering if these films have a different process or layout for you from the Marvel films. And also, you work on so many different genres of films. Do the genres bring out different parts of your writing?
Yeah, I mean, the process is different depending on the director. That's really, like I just did this film with Taylor Sheridan, who's amazing, called it's Those Who Wish Me Dead, and I do the series Yellowstone with Taylor, and which is like it's like the West, the music that inspired the West to be what we know as Western music, which is really gypsy music from Europe, when people came here and they brought their harmoniums and violins became fiddles and on and on. And so I kind of did a mythological type of musical background for that. And here comes Taylor with a movie that is completely different. And the cool thing about, like you're saying, the different genres is that if you have that director connection, they'll bring you with you. I mean, they'll bring you with them into something else. John Chu, I did the movie Now You See Me. He directed that. That is basically, you know, a throwback jazzy score colliding with Harry Potter. I don't know. It's like magical, you know, all those things. It is not the thing you would think of for like a heartfelt romantic film, Crazy Rich Asians with big band jazz, right? Like, you know, but the reason that I was given that opportunity was because he just totally believed in me. And that's why those relationships are so important. I love the different genres. There was never a part of me that didn't want to yearn to learn these genres. Everything from, I mean, it's funny, as like a drummer, as a studio drummer and piano player and programmer and all those things, like I truly, I loved metal. I loved hip hop. I was a programmer on like programmed drums for hip hop records, but I was a drummer on like jazz and metal records. So it was like, I didn't ever close the walls. It's fun that I give that example only because I remember at the time the advent of more programming in drum machines and sample drums and all that kind of thing. It was seen as the enemy to most musicians, or especially drummers, thinking here comes the robots to take our jobs. And I just didn't see it that way. I was really into hip hop. And so I think the idea of programming at 808 was cool to me. And so that the kind of love for the different genres is pure in my soul. It wasn't something I had to force as a film composer to learn different genres because a director was going a certain place. I just was always very wide in what I love to listen to and what I really tried hard to do my best to going to you know, figuring out the best way that I could write those genres of music. And so that's why I got very, I think, fortunate. And there's no one type of movie that I'd, you know, scored. I just finished one called Redeeming Love, and the entire thing is, it's a basically concerto for violin, and it is the most heartbreaking story, 19th century period piece, love story, tragedy. And I love being able to do that coming off of, I just finished Fast and Furious 9. So they like have nothing to do with each other, and it keeps it real fresh. You know, you want to be able to, you don't want to do the same thing. Like I was doing so many superhero movies actually at a time that I kind of like wanted to take it easy on that. And that's why I had the schedule open to do Crazy Rich Asians. And so I think that's important too, as everybody that's in this chat and, you know, all young film composers coming into it, is to definitely challenge yourself to shake it up. I think that keeps things fresh and interesting. And so that's why I do what I do.
Wonderful. So on top of all your scoring, I wanted to ask you about your conducting. You conduct the London Philharmonic, Philharmonia Orchestra of London, Hollywood Studio Symphony. Can you talk about your career of conducting? And you conduct many of your own scores.
Yeah.
How do you think that helps you?
You know, everyone's different. Conducting is almost it's a completely different muscle, you know, than composing. So it's not a necessary thing by any means. And a lot of people hate conducting. I wasn't going to conduct my own scores. It was just happenstance. I was doing a score. We were with I trying to remember. It was London. Anyway, no. It was in the States, New York. The thing I remember was I had a conductor and he had a family emergency in the middle of the session and had to leave. He bailed. And so I he basically gave me the baton and, here you go, Brian, it's all you. And I was terrified, because I'm thinking you're going to see me as an imposter. I'm a self-taught musician, on and on and on. And so I got up there, and the piece was a nightmare of a piece to start with. Instead of having something that really had a solid, quick beat pattern that wouldn't show nerves, it was 48 beats per minute, and it was in 3/4. So the beat, the baton at the end is like shaking because it exaggerates your nerves, so I'm doing that, and it was like a complete nightmare. But by the end of the day, I was like, I like this. And the thing I realized is that I did not have to tell a conductor, no, that's not exactly, you need to dial it back. I know that the sheet music says mezzo piano, and that is what it should be, but they're playing a little out. So can you bring it back down? The vibrato is a little bit too much, because the scene, it's a tracking shot, and the person gives all the stuff that I'm trying to like just say from the booth and the microphone to tell the conductor to tell the orchestra. It's like having a middleman. So for me, it was so direct. I could realize I could change the sound of the piece to how I wanted in midstream. And instead of doing 5 takes, I would do 2. And I realized that also it was like, this is my baby. No one knows this music better than I do. Why am I having someone else, especially conductors, not gonna know the film like that? I've seen this film 1,000 times, every frame. I know that harp glissando is on the back. You want to be a little behind the beat because of the frame cuts and tracking shots, and all those things go into it. And then it became something I loved doing. I really, I loved watching conductors as a kid, Herbert von Karajan and Leonard Bernstein and even John Williams. And to the point of now when I tour, and I do well, not in COVID, but when I was doing touring, we're picking back up, where I would do world tours, where I would do with an orchestra, and you'd show films up on a big screen, and you do it, is that, again, it's like a little kid. I remember watching so many conductors. I have kind of morphed those into my conducting style, and you can see a little bit of Bernstein, you see a little bit of Von Karajan, and the side John Williams kind of thing, and all these things I didn't realize I was doing until I saw myself on film. But really, we all stand on the shoulders of giants, and conducting is just one of those things that I feel is like now an instrument of expression that is super important to me. But it's not necessary for everybody. Just for me, yeah.
Yeah, that's great that you can take control and really know what the music needs.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go back to scoring. You've done numerous television shows like Yellowstone, Scorpion, Hawaii Five-O, Last Call, Sleepy Hollow, Transformers Prime, so on. Can you talk about how TV's different from the other mediums? Does this change? I know there's a lot of short deadlines and whatnot.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm on Yellowstone right now, and I tell you, there's some series I've done that really challenge you to commit, because Yellowstone is something that's live music, and it's if you're doing live music every day, every week, there's no time to second guess, right? And hey, look at that. Oh, wait a minute, am I muted?
We can hear you.
Okay. You're good. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, mute came up on there. So so the idea of the short deadline just means you don't have time to second guess. You just go for it. One of the first things I did was Star Trek, full orchestra, and you're in there. And I remember seeing this thing. I was doing a Borg invasion thing, and I was conducting, and as I was conducting, like on the breaks, I was writing the next episode. Like, it's literally, you have to do it in 5 days, and you're basically just screaming. The ones like Terra Nova and Star Trek and Yellowstone, that are all live, you're really flying by the seat of your pants, because you have a day to prep, a day to record, and then there's 4 days basically to write 40 minutes. It's insane. And you just keep on going. The thing that's great though is that you get to develop themes much more subtly with a longer kind of half-life. You can see over a longer stretch of time, especially with shows that aren't one-offs but have one storyline. You can really develop themes in ways you can't in a film, because you have 15, 17 hours of a story to really dial in and do interesting things that you might not be allowed that kind of latitude in a film. I love it. All types of scoring for me, it's great because it's all very different. It just, the one thing you can't do is enjoy sleep too much, because I mean, for me, it was 10 o'clock Zoom. I finished my last cue last night at 7:45 a.m. and that is normal. And I went to bed for 2 hours. And yeah, basically, and I was 15 minutes out, and then I came here, and so it's like, if you're doing that, you're going to be working till the morning, 7 days a week, 365, and so you have to love it if you want to get into that. If you want to, do movies and TV, and I was lucky enough to be given those opportunities, but I can't imagine not doing it. I have to have very understanding family members.
Well, we're really lucky to have you here, even with a couple hours of sleep. So thank you.
I'll be working right after this, so it's all good. I'm doing right now I'm doing 4 movies. One's an animated, fun, really postmodern movie for Disney. Doing a movie for Paramount, Scream, and then a movie for Sony Pictures, a thriller, and then like an epic time travel movie too. Anyway, so they're all kind of going on, and the deadlines everything got kind of bunched up because COVID put things on hold a little bit, and then everyone's like trying to race to get things out to the theater now.
Yeah. Well, that's
which is a good thing.
It
got scary there for a bit.
So I wanted to go into video games.
Oh, yeah.
Not all film composers also do video games, but you do, and you've done video games such as Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, Need for Speed, many things, Assassin's Creed, etc. Can you talk about how video games are different? For example, I know they're interactive, so the way you write is different. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, so again, this is another one of those things that I'm just doing what I love. As you could probably surmise from my comic book collecting and action figure collecting, that I was a gamer my whole life, and so it's crazy. I'm not sure, like Far Cry, all those ones, like the series Far Cry, Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, those are ones that I played, those in the previous series. Like it's not like they had to sit me down and go, Brian, there's this thing called video game, there's a series called Assassin's Creed, and it was like, yeah, I got you. And they came to, it's funny, like the first one, I don't know what it was, but they came to me thinking that for some crazy reason thought that I wouldn't want to do it, score these games. And I was like, yeah, I mean, just for the opportunity to play the game ahead of everybody else, because you become a beta tester, it's the most fun thing ever. It's like you see the game kind of developing, and you get to be playing with the best players in the world, which are the people that create the code and write it. It's insane fun. And so, and talk about just on average really good people. There's no, like, the bullshit factor is really low. Like, there's some people in the film industry for sure that are there for all the wrong reasons and failed upward, and I hate them. And they're the depths of their musical ineptitude knows no bounds. But like the gaming community, Yeah, it's cool. So the thing that's different is that you have to really write modularly. You can't just, you're not writing to a static shot that's never going to change. You're basically writing music that's modular that then is going to be conducted by the person playing the game. So as they go through and you trigger different pieces, you have to make sure that you have modulations that make sense. You do not want to stay in the same key, and that's boring, but you want to have relative modes and relative keys that you can go back and forth. Also, kind of the rule of thirds. If you have an action piece going, you need to downshift. You really want to do it about 2/3 speed, so it sounds like you're in 6/8 or something like that, but it doesn't feel like you slow down, but you did slow down, and it tricks the brain, and all these things you learn just because you have to, in order to make the game playing seem like really tight, but also the transitions being very seamless emotionally. So it does what scoring a film does, but it's not static. And I highly recommend writing music for video games, for sure. I just did like a few. I just did one in China, two actually. Journey for Peace and Lost Ark, which, yeah, that's going. In fact, I'm doing a soundtrack like as we speak right now. We're mastering that, and like I think tomorrow.
Nice. Something that's interesting, you touched on it, but you're a multi-instrumentalist and you play many different instruments such as piano, guitar, drums, cello, world percussion, world instruments. How did this start, and do you find yourself writing for these instruments because you play them?
Yeah.
How do you incorporate?
It's funny. I have to actually check myself in terms of writing for what I play for. I do feature clearly instruments that I'm more familiar with, but I can play especially world instruments. I love playing bouzouki and charango and all those kinds of things. Even koto, I love playing the koto, and sometimes I play the koto instead of a harp on a score. If you listen real closely, it's actually not harp. But those kinds of things, I do cello. Certainly I play a lot of cello solos on my scores. Violin, I'm okay. But piano and drums, guitar, bass, those are things that I'm really most adept at. All the solos on my scores are that. The thing that's great about that is I don't have to hire another person to play the piano solos or whatever it might be. I can just do it, and the translate is such a personal instrument too. The way it's performed, solo instruments, you have to be really careful about. I sing as well, so I sing on probably every score of mine. It's an atmospheric thing, kind of have this range. In fact, you hear a boy soprano on it, that's usually me just doing falsetto. I'm just fake it till you make it. But that kind of thing is certainly very useful. But I think if you're writing for instruments, you really need to at least sit in their shoes, because when you're writing for strings, do not write it like you're a piano player. Don't write it like just because the samples can do it. You got to be really careful about making like transverse strings, string jumping. Where is the open string? What is most comfortable for them? And then you switch to trumpet. Okay, are you going to be in B flat? Are you going to be in C? What are you doing? The intervals, making sure if it's a brass heavy piece that you're writing for brass players and not writing for your keyboard that can play anything because there's samples. And I think there's a bit of just empathy. It's like empathetic writing, that if you write that way, thinking of them really carefully, from woodwinds to strings to everything, they're going to play better, and it's going to be more comfortable with them to be in their wheelhouse. So I think that's an important thing to learn. There's also things that are kind of non-traditional instruments outside of world instruments. Like for me, I love programming. I love sound design, like IDM, underground hip hop, like electronic music that's really ear candy, sonic candy. Learning how to produce tracks is a huge thing, and I'm really lucky that that's another side career. I produce tracks with Post Malone and Wiz Khalifa and Billie Eilish and people like that. And when I have that hat on, it's, to me, that's as much of a musical endeavor as learning to write for an orchestra. And I sometimes pull that back into scoring. But it's something I love doing. Just worked on this thing with Run the Jewels that is going to be really cool. It's coming out. And so all these, but anyway, so basically, yes, the instruments aren't just instruments. I think everything musical is something that you want to try to get inside someone else's shoes, and then producing or writing it for an instrument or learning an instrument is going to just inform your writing. It will make you write differently than if you just stick to the one thing that you grew up playing. I think it's very important to challenge yourself.
Yeah, that's really true about not just writing for your keyboard.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, people can listen to your work and they say, that's the Brian Tyler score, that's his sound. Do you think this came from just years of experimenting, or do you do something very specific to hone your own sound?
I think that there's a thing that I do that it's hard for me to get out of the way of. There's a stylistic kind of way I write melodies thematically, like it's very, like, it may be encased in all sorts of different styles, but it's hard. I'm a thematic writer. And so what happens is if I'm doing like an action sequence, you'll always notice that it always has like it's melodic, and usually has it has a 3-part, it's kind of like a 3-act or part 3 of a musical journey in any particular cue. So there's like an intro, and then there's these things I do no matter what the piece is. The approach kind of has something that sounds like me for some reason at the end of the day. I think part of that also kind of goes to the previous question, is what you learn and what you enjoy listening to and what you've endeavored to master. Those things you kind of take in. I do like that phrase. I said it earlier, standing on the shoulders of giants. It's not just a Stephen Hawking book. It is a concept to me that is so entrenched in learning. The thing you never want to do is feel like you've made it, in the sense that now I'm going to shut off learning from younger or people around the new thing. You always want to be open to that. Never say like, when I was growing up, it was the best. That's all I need to do. I'm never going to, no, that is the death of creativity, when you stop learning and you feel like you know it all. And I think part of that attitude maybe goes into how my writing style is like kind of this this constantly evolving thing, but it will always be associated, I guess, with me. I always find it amazing when people I get messages all the time. I was watching this movie and I heard the music and I thought, I know that's Brian. And I was like, how did you know that? Because it was like something like Crazy Rich Asians, or like, how on earth would you hear the first piece is the Texting Swing. It's a big band piece. How on earth would you know that? But somehow, I mean, I guess that's a good thing. I don't know. Maybe it's a bad thing. No idea. But apparently, that is a thing. So I'm not answering the question at all. This is a terrible answer. Please go to the next one.
That's fine. I'll give one more question, then open it up. Okay. So all of us here are students, whether we're undergrads or we also have master's students here.
Cool.
We're all on kind of different paths, but we're all still trying to break into the industry. Do you have any advice that you have for us students that want to get into the professional world? What kind of paths do you see for us?
Yeah, I think it feels like yesterday that I was right there. I think really, you've heard it before, but the idea of really following exactly where your heart leads you in terms of your art is so important, because there is no downside to that. One, you're going to be more passionate about what you're doing, and then you'll kind of, law of attraction, find people surrounding you that are like-minded. The corollary is equally dangerous, is if you do what they think you want to do in order to make it, you God forbid you're successful, and then you find yourself doing something you fucking hate. I've seen that happen. People can be talented. You guys are all talented. I know you Berkeley students. When I was at Harvard, I used to hang at Berkeley. Like I like shred my ass. I'd do like gospel chops, like like I do gospel drum shed, and like I would go in there just mind blowing. Like it was so much fun hanging with. So I know how talented you are, and the thing is, you're that talented that you could easily kind of drop into something, into doing a gig, because you think that's what they want you to do. Just be yourself. I mean, you got to believe it, because you just don't want to be doing something you don't want to do. Even with music, you can find yourself just they're like, what did I get myself to do? What I really want to do is this. So instead of saying that later, just kind of go for that, and that is really where it will lead you, and they'll find you. Like I was saying earlier, make sure if you're going into film composing or TV or game or whatever, film composers, just don't forget that first name, film. You want to learn about film. When you're talking to a director or producer, especially directors, they're not really going to be like, I think Mixolydian would be better, and also why don't you use a shakuhachi for the lead? I mean, that is not how they talk. The Rosetta Stone of working with a director is that you both speak film. So you want to learn about film. Don't skimp on that side of it. Really learn blocking, shots, lenses, editing, how the lingo of how it is, and learn the mechanics of why a rack focus with a shallow depth of field and a push in does something, and musically you want to start a sustain usually on a dolly shot, and you can talk about these things because the director is going to respond to that. Oh, you speak film, because they feel intimidated by musicians they always try to kind of start the conversation by like and they think they have to like bone up on like musical language, and and that's not it. You want to talk about what do you want for the scene emotionally, and you just can disarm the whole thing, and they will, if you that's what you want to do, I would say study that, because you're already an insanely talented musician and writer of music that you have, right? So learn the other side as much as you can, because that is going to be the key to getting gigs and locking in individuals, other artists that aren't musicians, like directors, that you need in this world.
Wonderful. So I'll read some of the questions from the audience. A lot of people like Assassin's Creed 4.
Oh yeah.
So just
Yeah.
letting you know.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, that's another one. They brought me on and to do something that was like kind of like a gypsy music, like that kind of melody in 3 is like really, and in 7 is just God, I loved doing that. But anyway, go ahead.
Aiden is wondering, how do you juggle multiple projects at once, time-wise, and developing so many different materials at once?
Oh boy. Okay, so this is the story of my life. Literally, I have never been able to. There's no intelligent way. There's no braining your way through crazy schedules. It is just, you have to. And so it basically, like I kind of alluded to before, the sleep factor, you will dig into that deficit and say, okay, it's like borrowing from yourself from the future. Like, well, I'm doing these 2 things. And by the way, you will never be able to control your schedule. It is a fool's errand, because what happens is I commit to movies 2 years in advance now, or something like that. And they say, yeah, we're gonna be finishing. And okay, I remember like Power Rangers or something. It was like, we're gonna finish in June of 2000, whatever. It ends up being like 2 years later or a year later. And then there's another movie that was going to come out the following summer, and that moves up. No, we want to do a Christmas release. Doink. And then they just land right on top of each other. And literally, I get this schedule. This happens all the time. And I'll get like 4 movies on top of each other. I'll get the schedule and I'll say, Brian recording Avengers. This happened actually. I was recording the Avengers in London. It was like January 14th through 20th. And I had Fast and Furious 7 scoring January 16th through 23rd in LA. Like, what are you going to do? Now you have them on top of each other. It's insane. So you just try to move things around and find time. You have to also completely find a way to, kind of keep to each movie, which for me is actually so refreshing, to make everything sound and feel different. So you're not blurring your 2 movies or 4 movies or whatever projects you're doing. So this is why I really love, I've been really fortunate. Anytime I have like 2, 3, 4 movies on top of each other, they all happen to be completely different. And so you never confuse them. But if you happen to be doing 2, let's say thrillers or horror films at the same time, that is going to be tricky, but you really have to compartmentalize your state of being. It's not easy in terms of doing that, but are any of us in this for anything for the love of the game? No one gets into this for like the money, or for, if you're into film composing, you're not doing it for being on stage. Your idea isn't like, I'm going to be the lead guitarist on stage with fucking, like, that is not our soul, just as by nature, any of us, I think. So we love, I think, what we do so much that you are probably going to be totally cool with those sacrifices and keeping it fresh, because you have to. But I love it. I'm not complaining at all.
Wonderful. So Alexis is asking, do you have a process to help you find inspiration for writing a project if you're stuck on where to go?
The blank page gambit, right? So I don't know if all y'all know where it comes from. I have no idea, honestly, the very basic. I don't know how to write music. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know why it appears in your brain. Like it's mysterious, right? Someone needs to break this down for me, because I still don't know where it happens. So the terror of having a new project and thinking, I have no idea what the fuck I'm going to do, right? It is continuous. It never ends, because you don't know if all of a sudden you're going to wake up one day and, like in a Twilight Zone episode, and all of a sudden it's just that your brain is like silent and the page is blank. So honestly, I haven't run into that yet. So I just kind of go with my instinct and start writing. There is one time I can remember that I did get a little like stumped at first, which was not writing for movies, was writing the theme for the sport of Formula One, which they asked me to do. And here's the reason why it was crazy. Short story. I'm a massive Formula One fan, like since I was a child. Like I watched practice, qualification, and race. Like I watched the practice. That's crazy, right? So this is the thing that I love to do when I'm unwinding that isn't watching a movie, because every time I watch a movie, it gives me anxiety, because there's always like 5 people in the movie that they're in a movie that I'm currently doing. It reminds me of work. Okay, so I can't watch movies when I like barely, I have to do it on my off time. So I'll watch Formula One and I love it. Here's the problem. They asked me to do the theme. If I fail writing the theme, it's going to ruin my favorite sport forever, because every time I watch it, I'll be like, that could have been my theme, and I choked, right? So that was almost one of those, like, I have no idea how to encapsulate this beautiful sport that I love in the emotion into a theme, and that threw me. And so you just have to kind of like walk away and do other things. Don't force it, and it'll come to you. And thank goodness that it actually ended up working out. I can still watch Formula One, and I hear my music now every week, every time.
Yeah, that must be awesome to hear your music. So Michael's asking, for Avengers Age of Ultron, I know that the score was a collaboration between you and Danny Elfman. I was wondering how that collaboration experience went. What kind of partnership? Do you divide cues or do you do them together?
Yeah, the wild thing is, like, I'm a huge Danny Elfman fan, and Avengers was this movie. I was on it for quite a while before Danny was on it. The movie changed like right before releasing, and we needed to do, and the movie was like, at the time was 3.5 hours, and we need to do a bunch of new kind of things that, and Danny was like, how do we do this? Do we, exactly this question that you just asked is what Danny asked. He's like, he's like, Brian, I'm stepping into your world. I'm here to help. You know, what, how do we do this? So we did it kind of like a band type of thing where I had all these themes that were already set up. Also, remember, I'd written the Loki theme and the Thor theme and the Iron Man theme and the all these themes for so many characters already in the other films I'd done for Marvel, and then all the ones I established, like Ultron's theme is already there, the bad guy, and so all those things I had to like send to him, and like written out, and then here's an example of the piece, like in its purest form. And I'm going to London. You work on this section. You know, there was a new thing. It was actually, I wrote the Vision theme, which was after Danny was actually on board. It was like, okay, if there's these other characters, why don't you take this one? Da, 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 da. And it kind of ended up being just like a, sometimes we'd make a mistake and we'd do the same cue. It was like, why did we waste that time? We both did it. I remember there's this one cue. It was like, oh, why did we we fucked up. We both did the same one. But pretty much besides that, we never like tried to, we did take cues. We would collaborate thematically, but we would take cues. At the end of the day, he wasn't on that long. So I think I would know from the cue sheet, I think he had like 17 or 19% of the score was credited to Danny, or somewhere around 20. And so it was like, it was a collaboration, but it would have been cool to actually have done it from day one and done it like a full on. I love doing those where you sit down at the beginning and you have ideas and you feel like you're in a band again, you know. It has that feeling. This is more like it was a band, but like at the end of the tour, like all of a sudden you're band, you know. And I love Danny so much. He's so cool and such a nice guy, so talented. It's insane that it was honestly just an honor. And I've done shows with him, done some like I did a concert with him and stuff, and yeah, cool stuff. Sure.
Awesome. So Emily says, you mentioned on Instagram that Clouds was a particularly personal score for you. What does this story mean to you, and what memories do you want to remember from it?
Boy, okay, so Clouds, if you're not familiar, it's a true story of Zach Sobiek, who's a 17-year-old music writer that passed away of brain cancer. And at 17, right as he became was starting to write music, and he would have continued and become, maybe, who knows, he was interested in film composing too, actually. So the reason why it's so special for me is that it resonates with me. I felt like I saw a lot of me in him, but at the same time, I'm writing music for a real human being. It is not Tony Stark, right? I met his family, his parents, his ex-girlfriend, his best friend, all there. Went to the house. There's his bedroom. There's the guitar he played. Do you want to use his guitar, Brian? Okay. You're going to write his theme. He wrote music, but he needs a theme. So I'm writing a theme for a human being who has loved ones, is still fresh. He died not too long ago. I'm writing this music for a real person. Talk about incredible responsibility. I mean, channeling that kind of thing. I wrote music. I listened to his mixtapes. I tried to get in his mindset as a writer. What would he do if he wrote this score? And it was something else. I never felt more nervous than playing the Clouds theme, which was this 9-minute piece that I did, which is the first piece on the soundtrack for his parents and his sister. And we were on Zoom and we played it, and they're kind of closing their eyes. I could see, and they start crying, and it's beautiful. Like, felt like we were in touch and communicating. It was like no other experience I've ever had. just that in that moment of playing that music for his loved ones. And so in terms of being personal, it can't get much more personal than that. It was just a transcendent, real experience of the power of music and how it can bring people together. And in this case, honor someone that that you know was striving to be one of us.
That's a beautiful story. I want to respect your time, so I'll lump two questions together as our last question.
It's all good.
So Kyle asks, what happens when you and the director or the team have different visions for the film?
Yeah.
Trey is wondering, what's the most rewarding aspect of composing for you?
So I'm sorry. The first one was
when you and the team, the director, producer, have different visions for the story.
Oh, okay. I'll do that one. You can just ask me the next one. I'll take them separate. Yeah, this happens. Here's the thing: is it happens, but it doesn't happen because there is no other vision than the director's, right? I mean, it's their movie and their vision. All I'm trying to do is musically represent what they want for their film. Certain different pieces, yeah, for sure. You're going to run into things where they have a temp score that they put in, and they're like they might get hooked on it. And in that case, you just have to kindly and supportively guide them to what they really want at the end, which is something for them that is unique to their own movie. And if you're really honest about it and lead with just like pure intention that you just want to help them in the movie, you're going to get there. I've never run into a situation with a director where we weren't able to see eye to eye fairly quickly. We're talking about, I think I looked on my BMI thing. I have something like 22,000 pieces that I've written, something crazy like that that's registered. And probably 3-4 of those total were things where it was absolutely, it could not resolve. And I just ended up doing something I didn't want to do. But pretty much, if you're honest and upfront as an artist, you're gonna be able to do it. It's gonna be fine, and just roll with it.
So, if it's okay, I'll have 2 more questions.
That's all good. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So what's the most rewarding aspect of composing for you? Like, what do you find rewarding in your work?
I think as musicians and especially writers, as composers, we want, at least me, I want people to just hear my music and let it, where they love it or not, or somewhere in between. I just want them to experience that because that's my way of expressing myself. Words fail me at trying to express myself. If you want to really get to know me, listen to my music, it says a lot more than me talking. And so the fact that I have a forum where millions of people hear what I do, they may not know what I look like or anything about me, but they hear it and they're affected by it emotionally in the theater. And I get to be, behind the curtain, influencing their emotions. To me, that's a beautiful thing. And it's really a dream as a person that writes music, that it just is heard. That's all I wanted. I didn't want money. I didn't want fame, nothing. I wanted my music to be heard, the music. And that is the most rewarding part of it to me.
Wonderful. So we see you now, even though you haven't had much sleep, you look very awake and positive and happy. I was just wondering,
That's very kind.
How do you keep your health going well and self-care?
Right. Yeah. So, I was actually watching something that was on YouTube, and someone was talking about how bad it is not to sleep, right? It was like this medical breakdown of it, and how you're just you're basically killing yourself. I don't know that to be true. I'm not really. I think things that have helped, weirdly enough, I'm not a substance person. I don't even drink coffee. it's I've just been able to kind of been motivated by adrenaline because I always have deadlines, I suppose. And so in terms of the health thing, I'm always active. So I'm physically always moving. I'm not a gym person by any means, but I do enough in here. Crazy enough, I grew up also kind of a weird thing. I was like a competitive like breakdancer, like pop and lock, like battles and stuff like that. So I still do that, like just on my own, like for exercise, kind of just, but not for exercise, because I'll be working on a hip hop track or something. I'll be, and I'll just I'll just do it. And so that kind of actually, weirdly enough, is that in drumming, which is, I'll put on like Meshuggah or something and, just like play for like an hour. And that will be, just, put on like, Dream Theater record. That kind of thing. It's actually just, I don't really go out of the studio, so I never go to the gym or anything like that. But I think the idea of being excited about what you do, you look forward to waking up in the morning, honestly. And I'm working on Are We Dreaming? It's a project I'm directing, actually. It's like a modern Fantasia meets modern music. It's insane, like this thing. And so I wake up going, oh my God, like I'm just excited to see the shot list and what we're shooting and what lenses we're using and what it's going to be. And like, and then, I get to then work for 2 hours on this scene from this animated feature for Disney that's fucking awesome, and it's the excitement that keeps me going. And I know I've been doing it since 1997. It's been a while. It's been a minute. But all of this is cool. Sometimes, again, like working on like a hip hop record coming up, or like I was saying, like the Run the Jewels thing or whatever. Like I'm like, damn, I get to do this, fuck yeah. And so it keeps it exciting. Gil Shaham, my favorite violinist in the world, was the soloist on my Redeeming Love score that I just finished. It's fucking dream. Did it in New York at the Met, and like those are the things that kind of keep you healthy in a way, because I think it's like if you're healthy of mind, the body will follow, hopefully. Who knows? You like, I say this, and like tomorrow you're gonna see like an internet, like a tweet, Brian Tyler, falls apart and collapses due to, surely it's gonna happen someday. So I pride comes before a fall.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Sure.
I think I can speak for a lot of us that you're a real inspiration.
Oh, thank you.
And someone that we look up to. So it's amazing to see you in this virtual space and get to meet you.
Yeah, you too. I'm glad to talk to you all. I wish I could be in a room to see everybody and hang out. But anybody in this, please feel free to like hit me up on DM or whatever, and just if you have any questions or anything like that about the industry or getting into it, for sure. Just let me know that you're in this chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Cool. All right. See y'all.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Sure.